It's been a common catch-call, I think, for the last 10 years or more, that principals need to be leaders of learning. And nobody can argue about that. I mean, it's a truism. They're in charge of a school, and a school is a learning institution, so of course it makes sense that they're leaders of learning. The question becomes is, how exactly do they do that? And in fact, even before that, what does it mean? Does it mean modelling? Does it mean enabling? Modelling in the sense of saying this is how you teach effectively. Does it mean enabling? Well, look, I'll set the conditions for my teachers to go at it in terms of resources and structure and time and space and so on. And that's true, it does involve all those things. But it lands differently in different types of schools and at different levels of school. I think it can make more sense, certainly in a direct way, in smaller primary schools, where the teachers and the principal are pretty much in common everyday touch. They see each other, or they walk past each other in classrooms and in the buildings, quite regularly and so on. So there's a natural sort of synergy that can develop in a smaller school. And in a primary school where there are learning areas that the primary school principal would be across, you have that natural, I think, potential for principals to mix it with their teachers. But as the schools get larger and as they get more specialised, the term principal as literacy leader starts to change meaning, subtly and sometimes in fairly dramatic ways. Because if you take a large high school, how could a principal who has studied a degree in fine arts and has specialist knowledge in related areas of history and so forth, how can they be a leader of learning to a year 11 and 12 mathematics teacher, or a year 9 or 10 phys ed department? It becomes a little bit fraught. But what we are seeing in Australian education is a continued move along those lines. We've had over recent years projects that have been funded called Principals as Literacy Leaders or Principals as Numeracy Leaders. There is a current project, Principals as STEM Leaders, and they're noble projects. The design and delivery, and in fact the consequences, the outcomes of those projects are far more complicated than the name can suggest. For principals to be leaders of any particular type of learning, yes, they do need to know the fundamentals. And so there is a real place for principals to know about numeracy, to know about literacy, and to know about STEM, science, technology, engineering and mathematics. But not be expected to be experts in those areas, but enough to enter into a professional conversation, knowing what the content areas are, the major concepts and so forth. But moreover, what the language of the pedagogy is. That's good. But there's something else with that. It's about how those principals design and support effective teaching in those areas. And you really can't do one without the other. You need to be able to know the substantive professional area or discipline to a degree. But you also need to have your leadership capacities and your strategic thinking and your practical skills at work as well. The other part of that particular area of principals as leaders of learning presupposes that teachers may not be leaders of learning. I think the best types of projects that come under those sorts of umbrellas that are those projects that develop the learning capacity of the teachers as well as the principals. If principals are learning about STEM, for example, it should be done in a way that's collaborative so that the teachers of STEM who have the expertise can learn from the principal about what it takes to enable, to support, to model effective teaching. In a way, it can be imagined as the principals learning more about teaching and the teachers learning more, at least be conscious of what it takes to make the types of decisions principals make that will support their teaching. So it becomes a two-way professional development exercise, not a supercharging of principals or expecting them to be all things to all people.